Well, good morning. Stacy McLean here, First Baptist Church, University Place. And we are back to recording videos on my laptop. Unfortunately, on Sunday, it wasn't a COVID complication, but it was a power outage in the whole neighborhood. So as we had no power, and it didn't come on until, I think, 1 in the afternoon, didn't have the 9:30 service. We didn't have the 11 o'clock. Well, we did have the 11 o'clock service, but it was a candlelight service. And so we had people coming for that. But I know a lot of you can only see stuff on video, so I'm recording this for you. And hopefully this works out. It's been a while since I've recorded something on my laptop. So today, what we are in the 13th chapter of Mark. And as we come to the 13th chapter of Mark, it's a different section. It's different because it has this apocalyptic nature to it, sort of an end times type of nature to it. And in many respects, we're asking ourselves, why is it even there? I mean, in the broader context of Mark, chapters 8, 9, and 10, we have 3 passion predictions by Jesus. So he has predicted that he is going to be betrayed, that he is going to die, and that he will rise again. So we see this 3 different times in 8, 9, and 10. Then when it gets into chapter 11, we have Jesus' so-called cleansing of the temple. And he enters into the temple. It's interesting because Mark records it as he enters, he looks around, he goes back out, and then he goes back the next day, and that's when he begins to turn over tables and calls the leadership, he says that they're a bunch of robbers and that the temple is a robber's den rather than a house of prayer, which God has designed. So we see not so much a cleansing, but a repudiation of the temple, and the temple is seen as almost working against God's will as opposed to for it. So we see that in 11. As we go into chapter 12, the religious authorities are asking Jesus, by what authority do you do this? And then Jesus has, and we've seen this over the last several weeks, Jesus has responded to them. They keep on bringing up questions, and he keeps on answering the questions and putting them down and silencing them. If we skip forward to the 14th chapter, the 14th chapter involves itself with the description of the abandonment of Jesus. You're going to have Judas will betray him. You'll have Peter who will betray him or reject him. And we see that. So then the question is, why is 13 there? And many people will take chapter 13, they say, oh, well, here's our eschatology. Eschatology is a fancy word for the study of end times. So a lot of people will say, well, here we have our end times teaching, and that needs to be included in here. And it doesn't quite fit, but it's there. That's not true at all. This section, which we have, is designed to work as a warning and an exhortation to the disciples and those who will come after the disciples, I believe, to hold on to Christ, to hold on to him no matter what happens around them, and no matter what pulls them or pushes them. They need to hold on to Christ. Don't reject him. Hold on to him. So that's what we have as we come into the 13th chapter. So the 13th chapter, while many people want to focus in upon the eschatology, that is the study of end times, and that is there, I think that the primary purpose is the study of, or the looking at an exhortation to hold on and to remain firm, and to make sure that you're holding on to the right thing, or in this case, the right person. So let's take a real quick pick and look at chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what a wonderful stone, or what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." And Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." So you look at this, we see here that the disciples are very impressed with the temple building and impressed with the temple grounds. Now, these are men who have been to Jerusalem before, surely, but they are fishermen from Galilee. That's their hometown, and Galilee is not built up. And as they come into Jerusalem, it really is quite something which is astounding. And as the disciples are looking at the temple, once again, they are amazed by it. They're commenting on it. And I think they're still very optimistic about what is going to happen in Jesus's ministry. I mean, they're still thinking kingdom on earth right then and there. They're still thinking of Jesus as the deliverer from the Romans. That's in their mind. And it's almost as if they have a filter within their mind where they are willing to accept the glory. You know, Jesus comes to reign, but they will not accept the glory. And Jesus has done this over and over and over again. Chapters 8, chapter 9, chapter 10, Jesus has talked about how he's going to be betrayed, how he's going to be killed, and then how he will rise again. And they're always confused by this. They're always confused by this. So they glam on to that which is glorious, and they forget the other parts. And so here they are in the temple, and they're like, "Hey, look at this temple. That's glorious. That's something that's cool." And and Jesus surely is shocking them because once again, what does he say here? Do not do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And what Jesus is saying here, he's saying this temple is coming down. It's going to be done. Now that's an amazing statement right there. That's an amazing statement. Now let's take a look at what some of the contemporaries or people who had seen the temple, people who knew of the temple, and see their descriptions of it. The historian Josephus writes of the temple this. He says, the sacred edifice itself, the holy temple, in the central position was approached by a flight of 12 steps. The facade was of equal height and breadth, each being 100 cubits. That's about 172 feet, by the way. But the building behind was narrow. The exterior of the building wanted nothing the exterior of the building wanted nothing that could astound either mind or eye. For being covered on all sides with massive plates of gold, the sun was no sooner up than it radiated so fiery a flash that persons straining to look at it were compelled to avert their eyes as from solar rays. To approaching strangers, it appeared from a distance like a snow-clad mountain, for all that was not overlaid with gold was of the purest white. From its summit protruded golden spikes to prevent birds from settling upon them and polluting the roof. And so what we see then is this amazing, 17-story building, high and wide. That's what you've got, an incredible thing. And the sun rises up, it shines. It is a city on a hill. It is fabulous. It is a wonder of the world. A contemporary archaeologist, man who has spent most of his life in the studying of the temple or the temple ruins, named Rittmeyer. He writes, "We have seen the largest stones on the western wall of the Temple Mount measure 45 feet long, 11 feet 6 inches, and probably 14 to 16 feet deep. The weight of this stone is estimated at 570 tons. That's over 1 million pounds. Over 1 million pounds. We cannot be sure of the original dimensions of the foundation stones, but they must have been enormous." So what you have here is you have the temple. It is a source of national pride. It is a source of Jewish pride. This is astounding. This is amazing. There's no doubt about it. Well, Jesus says it's coming down. And that's got to be absolutely shocking to them. It's coming down. You ever watched the 1968 version of the Planet of the Apes? And I was a big Planet of the Apes fan when I was a kid. I mean, I was born after the first one came out, but I watched the reruns and stuff like that on television, and I just thought I thought that was just such a fascinating and awesome movie. And I remember if you watch the end of the first movie. Okay, and you can look it up on YouTube, just the last 2 minutes of it. You have Charlton Heston, he's riding a horse, and he's got his girlfriend on the back of it. And, they're going to start the world over again, or repopulate the earth, I guess. And here they are, they're riding their horse. And, the whole shtick of the movie is that, Charlton Heston, crash landed his spaceship upon this planet. And he had other friends with them, and they were killed, and now they're just trying to figure out how to survive. And they believe they're on a foreign planet, a different planet. And in the last 2 minutes of the movie, Charlton Heston, the girlfriend, the horse, they come, and all of a sudden you see that they've come to some great monument, and you're not sure what it is, and then all of a sudden you see what it is, and it's the Statue of Liberty. And Charlton Heston, he gets off his horse and he curses humanity, and he curses them because obviously what has happened is humanity has bombed itself into oblivion, and now the monkey people have risen to the risen to the fore. So you have the planet of the apes now, and in his mind there was no way whatsoever that the symbols of his nation, symbols of his planet, could ever fall apart. But there it is, the Statue of Liberty, about 3/4 of the way up, buried, and the Statue of Liberty is covered and gone. If somebody came up to you today and said, "Well, the White House will fall apart, and the Pentagon will fall apart, and Congress will fall apart, and the Statue of Liberty will fall apart, and the Liberty Bell will be melted down," you'd look at that and say, "That's crazy, Doc. That's crazy, Doc. Those are symbols of power. Those are symbols of some of our values, and there's no way that could happen." But this is exactly what Jesus is saying to his disciples. You guys are excited about the glorious. I'm going to go to the gory. That's what's going to happen here. I am going to the cross, fellas, and you keep on thinking of the right now and the glorious, and that's a mistake. So let's continue on with our passage here. They leave the temple area and they go to the Mount of Olives. Now, the Mount of Olives, you go from the temple, you go down to the Kidron Valley, you come back up, and you're on to the Mount of Olives. In today's world, if you're on the Mount of Olives, you're in the midst of a graveyard. The cemetery is what it is. So they're all over the place, tombs everywhere. And here is Jesus with a perfect view from the Mount of Olives, looking at Jerusalem and looking at the temple. And so we read in verse 3, and he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple. Okay, it's almost as if he's in opposition. He's almost it's almost as if he's against the temple. And Peter, James, and John and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign that these things are about to be accomplished?" So they're like, "Well, when is the temple going to come down? And what's the sign for that?" And what Jesus will do is, at this particular point, is he will not respond to their questions right away. He's not as concerned about what they're concerned about. He's concerned about, first and foremost, holding on to him. Let's read on. And Jesus began to say, "See that no one leads you astray." Now, the word here, "see that," I don't like that translation. The word here is "look" or "watch out." Watch out. And we see this word over and over and over again in this section. You see it, "see that no one leads you," that's watch out. If you were to go down to verse 9, "be on your guard," that means watch out, same word. If you go to verse 23, and that's going to be the last verse of our section today, he's going to conclude that with, "be on guard," watch out. It's literally look, pay attention. Here it is. Okay, so over and over again. So if you want to know the theme of this particular section, it's watch out. Watch out. It's a warning section more so than an eschatological section. The eschatology is a mechanism by which it helps us to understand that we need to watch out. Okay, so he continues on. He says, "See that no one leads you astray. Watch out. Many will come in my name saying, 'I am he.'" Literally, I am. Okay. "I am he, and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of war, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. These are but the beginning of the birth pains." Okay, they're labor pains. Okay, and what he's saying here says, listen, there's going to be wars. There's going to be rumors of war, but that's not the end. It's not. Kingdoms are going to fight against kingdoms. Nations will fight against kingdom. It's not the end. It's not. So don't get too riled up. Don't get too riled up. What you need to remember is, don't let these wars and rumors of war get you off balance. What you need to focus in on is this: focus in on me. Because there's going to be other people out there, they're going to say, "Hey, follow me. Oh, follow me. follow me. And there's false Christ, there's false prophets, and Jesus is saying, don't go after them. Follow me, stay with me, is what he is saying. He says, these are but the beginnings of the birth pains. You know, we oftentimes look at our circumstances. You know, we watch the news, we get depressed, or whatever the case may be. And you say, oh man, the world's not doing very well and things are bad. And you say, well, the environment, maybe there's a problem with the environment, or maybe there's a war someplace, or you don't like the election results, or whatever the case may be. And you say, well, these are not good things. And they may not be good things, but understand that they are labor pains. They are things which must take place before Christ is going to come again. You know, I've known a lot of pregnant women in my life, okay? And I have never met one woman who says, boy, I am really looking forward to going into labor. Zero, 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 zero. Nobody wants that, okay? That's one of the joys of being male, and something I don't have to experience, and I'm perfectly fine not having to experience that. But you know, I don't know of any woman who wants to go through labor, but she does want that child. Matter of fact, the labor pains are like, okay, whew, that was awful, but I've got the baby. And what Jesus is saying, he says, there's going to be difficult times coming up, and there will be people trying to move you off and get you away from me. Don't go there. Hang on. The labor pains must take place, okay? And they have to take place before the baby is born. Well, he continues on. Look over here in verse 9. He says, be on your guard. Look out. Watch. For they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before me. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And the brother will deliver brother over to death, and father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Watch out. Watch out. Listen, if we look at verses 9 through, 9 through 13, we almost see here a depiction or a description of the book of Acts, do we not? In the book of Acts starts off, you've got Peter and James, or not Peter and James, you got Peter and John, and they're preaching. They're immediately drawn before the Sanhedrin. A couple different times they're beaten, they're warned. We see that James is martyred early on. We see that the Apostle Paul will later on, and over again, he will give his testimony. I think 3 different times it's recorded in the book of Acts. And we know that Paul will speak to Agrippa. He will speak to Festus. You know, we believe he even, well, we're not positive, but it's very possible that he even spoke to the household of Caesar or Caesar himself. And so what we see then is we see that the gospel is on its way being spread out to the whole world. That's what we have going on there. And so though there is opposition, that should not surprise us. We see here this terrible section here where you see that you'll have division even within the family. The brother will give up brother, or a son will give up a father, or a father will give up a child. I mean, horrible type of stuff. But ultimately, what's the important thing at the end? But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Endurance, stay there. Again, listen, we have lots of things that would like to distract us from Christ. There's persecution up against you. There's also the other side too. There's opportunities where people say, come on. You know, we have sweet things for you. We'll give you things. We'll almost a bribe to come away from Christ. But we can have neither a bribe to walk away from Christ, neither can we have persecution to drive us from Christ. We must remain with him. Watch out. 3 times. Watch out. Watch out. That's the key there. Now, as we get into the 14th verse, we see here an interpretive difficulty. Let's call it that. So as we come into the 14th verse, we see here a section which a lot of people are going to disagree on, and you may disagree with me today, but That's okay. That's all right. But we come to the 14th verse, and we see some interesting vocabulary is used and some interesting allusions are used. Verse 14. When you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So we look at this and we ask the question, what in the world is an abomination of desolation? What's he talking about here? Now, this abomination of desolation, this term or these terms, these clearly, I don't think anybody would disagree with this, these clearly come from the book of Daniel. And we see in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 27, and we also see in Daniel chapter 11, verse 31, and also there's a reference to it in Daniel chapter 12. 3 different times this is referenced. So let's turn, we'll look at those very briefly. Daniel chapter 9 and verse 27. Starting in verse 24, talks about 70 weeks, and many people understand this as end times type of stuff. That's fine. But go to verse 27. And he, now this is somebody who has made an agreement with Israel, and in the midst of this final week, final group of 7, there's a breach. And he shall make a stronger agreement with many for 1 week. Okay, and we understand that as probably a 7-year period. And for half of the week he shall put, and for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice. I think I misread that. Let me read it one more time. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week, there it is, he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decree is poured out on the desolator. And so we see here this strange terminology. We say, what is this abomination of desolation? Well, it's a reference to here, to Daniel chapter 9. Look at chapter 11, verse 31. Chapter 11:31. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. Now, most people, when they look at this, understand this at least this way. They understand at the very minimum that this is a prophecy of the coming of Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV. And Antiochus IV, he is a general, he is a ruler which is a residual from Alexander the Great. Let's put it this way. Okay, Alexander the Great, when he died, he had 4 generals, and they take over the major territories. So essentially, he's Greek in background. That's probably good. He takes over the Syrian area, but so sometimes he's referred to as Syrian. That's all we need to know for right now. But Antiochus Epiphanes was a maniac. Matter of fact, he is sometimes referred to as Antiochus Epimanes, which means Antiochus, the mad one. And so here he is, and he has decided that the Jews are going to be Greek in culture. And he enters into the temple and he sets up an altar to Zeus, and he has a pig sacrificed on it. So this great sacrilege is there. Now, when most people look at Daniel chapter 11, they say, well, that's what's being talked about here. And I would agree with that. That certainly has something, that is certainly a part of it. Not only that, there's other sacrifices in other surrounding towns. And then, of course, we know that that's when the Maccabean revolt starts, as they fight against that. And so that's what you have, the Maccabean revolt, that whole section there. Jesus, however, we're into Mark chapter 13, and Jesus is talking about an abomination of desolation. Well, the abomination of desolation prophesied in the book of Daniel takes place in 167 BC. So as we come into Mark chapter 13, Jesus is speaking about a future to come abomination of desolation. So there's something else that's going to happen. So the majority of interpreters of Scripture say, well, what this is referring to, it's referring to the destruction of Jerusalem, which starts in 66 AD And finally, Jerusalem is completely destroyed in AD 70. And we have the temple, which is completely torn down. The walls are mostly torn down because the Romans have had just about enough with Jewish resistance, and they level it, they tear it down. So that's what you have here. But as I read it, just as in Daniel, it seems that there is a two-part thing. There's one, Antiochus Epiphanes, and now obviously there's something else in Jerusalem in AD 70. It seems that it might actually be a threefold one. Let me read on, and then I'll come back to that. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter the house to take anything out. Let the one who is in the field not turn back or take the cloak. Alas, for the women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that it may not happen in winter, for in those days there will be such tribulation as has not been from the beginning of the creation that God created until now and never will be. I mean, that's pretty massive right there. I mean, it's extreme language, correct? It gets even more extreme. Verse 20, and if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then if anyone says to you, look here, look, here's the Christ, or look there, he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be on the guard, watch out. I have told you all these things. So as I look at this section where there is, for many people, they say, oh, okay, so what Jesus is doing is he is taking up the vocabulary of Daniel chapter 9, 11, and 12, where it was referring to the abomination of desolation, which was, Antiochus the Fourth and 167 BC. And now Jesus is making a prophecy that it's the same type of thing, which is going to happen in the temple in AD 70. Okay. Most people stop there, but I think that the language forces us to understand it as threefold. I believe what we have here is not simply 167 BC or AD 70, but I think what we have here is the description of AD 70, but also a future judgment to come. The Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 writes of one who will come. And he writes of one who will come and, again, desecrate the temple. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1. Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by spirit or word or spoken word or letter coming to or seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. Again, as we look at this, Paul is writing, is warning them. He says, hey, don't let people deceive you. Same thing as Jesus is saying, don't let people deceive you. Look at verse 4. This man of lawlessness who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. Now, what's going on here? Now, Paul is writing before the fall of Jerusalem. So is Paul saying, well, there's going to be a general that comes in and plants himself right there in the temple, declares himself God? That doesn't really happen with General Titus, the Roman general who takes over. The extreme language of Mark chapter 13 makes us believe that there is more. There's more to come. And I believe, just as Daniel was speaking of the desecration by Antiochus Epiphanes in AD or BC 47, and also referring to AD 70, I think we also now in this passage see AD 70 and also a future where the temple is rebuilt and where there is someone who will come in, declare themselves God. And so what Jesus is warning, he says, listen, when you see that, run, get out. And when people are saying, hey, we know where the Christ is at, We got this false Christ over here. We got these wonders over here. He says, forget that. Watch out. Now, again, the point in all of this eschatological teaching here is not primarily designed for us to understand every detail of the future. That is not the point whatsoever. Okay. We don't get a whole lot of teaching or prophecy just to satisfy our curiosity, but we have just enough detail. We have just enough detail to work as an exhortation for us to watch out. And the watch out is not watch out for those who are going to come and get us. The watch out is watch out that we hold on to Christ. It's not the avoiding of the problems, because the problems are going to come, because the labor pains must come. Those things must take place. Okay, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But what you can do is that when those things come upon you, you hold on. You hold on to Christ. You do not let go. You do not quit. How significant this is. How significant this is. Because when we get into the 14th chapter, Jesus will go to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he'll take with him at least 3 of the 4 here. I don't think Andrew is mentioned when he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he takes his inner 3. And he takes them, he says, come with me just a little bit further on and watch and pray for me. And we see that they are to watch and they fall asleep. You see, the disciples were people who are very much like us, of course. They're selective on what they retain. They remember the glorious, but they forget the gory. This is a problem. We need to be a people who recognize and see the big picture. And the big picture is Jesus Christ. He's the master. He's over everything. Hold on to him. Don't be swayed by outside pressures. Don't be swayed by the briberies of the world's riches. Hold on to Christ. And when you have that perspective, it simplifies things. It just does. Jesus is telling his disciples, hold on, because chapter 14 is coming. Chapter 14 is coming. And the one who they believe is their king who will rule right then will be taken, falsely accused, and he's going to be heading to trial, and eventually his death. And they're looking at us saying the whole world is collapsing around us. Let's hide. Jesus is saying, watch out. Watch out again for those who would push you away from me. Hold on to me. I think it's very relevant for us today. It's relevant for the disciples. Hold on to Jesus. It's relevant for us today. Hold on to him. You don't like the news that you're watching? Hold on to Jesus. You like the news? Don't be too excited about the glory of the things around you. Hold on to Jesus. I hope this is a beneficial passage for you. It's a difficult passage. It's got a lot of dates in it, and I apologize for that. But I think it's an important passage. Hold on to him, folks. He is your hope. Amen. Thank you for being with me this morning, and God bless you.